It is by no means surprising that the extraordinary case of Mr. Valdemar has provoked so much discussion. In fact, it would have been a miracle if it hadn't, especially given the circumstances. Although all of us involved had wished to keep the matter away from the public, at least for a time or until new opportunities for investigation appeared, despite our efforts, a version, distorted and exaggerated, soon spread. It became the source of many unpleasant misrepresentations and, naturally, of deep disbelief. Now the time has come for me to recount the facts, as far as I am able to understand them, and as concisely as I can. For several years, the study of mesmerism had repeatedly drawn my attention. About 9 months ago, it suddenly occurred to me that in the long series of experiments carried out by myself and others, one very curious and inexplicable omission remained. Never had anyone attempted to mesmerize a person in articulo mortis, in the very act of dying. 3 questions immediately arose. First, would a patient in such a condition be susceptible to magnetic influence? Second, if so, would that influence be greater or weaker than usual? And third, and most important, to what extent, and for how long, could the hypnotic process delay the intrusion of death itself? Other points of curiosity existed, but this last one, because of its immense possible consequences, was the one that most fascinated me. Thinking about whether among my acquaintances there might be a subject willing to allow me to test this, I remembered my friend Ernest Valdemar, a well-known compiler for the Forensic Library and, under the pen name Issachar Marx, the translator of Wallenstein and Gargantua. Mr. Valdemar had lived since 1839 in Harlem, New York. He was remarkable for his extreme thinness, his legs resembled those of John Randolph, and for the stark whiteness of his whiskers, which contrasted violently with his jet-black hair, giving many the impression that he wore a wig. He had a very nervous temperament, which made him an excellent subject for mesmeric experiments. I had mesmerized him 2 or 3 times before, with little difficulty. Yet the results had disappointed me. His will never seemed to bend entirely to mine, and in matters of clairvoyance, he proved utterly unreliable. I attributed those failures to his failing health. For months the doctors had declared him tubercular. Valdemar himself always referred calmly to his approaching end, as something neither to be avoided nor regretted. So when my strange idea occurred to me, it was natural that I should think of him. I knew his serene philosophy too well to expect objections. He had no relatives in America who could interfere. I spoke to him frankly, and to my surprise, he became deeply interested. This surprised me because, although he had always willingly lent himself to my experiments, he had never before shown the slightest personal interest in them. His illness was of such a kind that doctors could predict with precision the time of his death. We agreed that he would summon me 24 hours before the appointed moment. More than 7 months ago, I received the following note in his own handwriting. My dear friend, you may come now. The physicians all agree that I shall not survive past tomorrow at midnight. They seem to have calculated the time very exactly. Valdemar. I received the note half an hour after it was written, and 15 minutes later I stood at the bedside of the dying man. I had not seen him for 10 days, and the change in so short a time horrified me. His face was leaden gray, his eyes without the faintest sparkle, his thinness so extreme that the skin had actually split at the cheekbones. He coughed continually, his pulse barely perceptible. And yet, his mind remained remarkably clear, his voice strong enough to speak distinctly. He greeted me calmly. At his side sat 2 doctors who had attended him. After shaking Valdemar's hand, I spoke privately with the physicians, asking them to explain his condition in detail. For 18 months, his left lung had been almost entirely ossified, useless in its upper portion. The right lung had begun to calcify as well. Its lower part was nothing but a mass of tubercles, pus-filled and merging into one another. Several large cavities had formed, and in one place, the lung had adhered permanently to the ribs. All of this had developed with alarming speed in the past month. Beyond tuberculosis, the doctors suspected an aortic aneurysm, though the rapid ossification made diagnosis difficult. Both doctors agreed Valdemar would die around midnight the next day. It was now 7 in the evening Saturday. They said their farewells, intending not to return, but at my request, they promised to examine him once more at 10 the following night. When they had left, I explained my proposal to Valdemar. Again, he showed himself not merely willing, but eager. He asked me to begin at once. But I could not proceed in front of the 2 nurses who attended him, ordinary people, incapable of responsibility should an accident occur. So I postponed until the next evening, when a medical student I knew, Mr. Theodore L., would be present to take notes and act as a reliable witness. By the following night, Valdemar was visibly near the end. Still, he insisted. And so, at 5 minutes to 8, holding his hand, I asked him to declare clearly that he consented to be mesmerized in his present state. Weak but distinct, he answered. Yes, I wish to be mesmerized, though I fear it may be too late. I began the passes that had previously worked best on him. He responded faintly, but not fully. For hours I labored, until, shortly before 11, when the doctors arrived as promised, I at last saw signs. His eyes took on that unmistakable expression of inner struggle which no one can mistake in hypnosis. His pulse was imperceptible, his breath rattled at half-minute intervals, his limbs were icy cold. But after several more passes, his eyelids fluttered like those of a sleeper, and soon he was completely entranced, rigid, unmoving, yet not dead. It was now midnight. The physicians examined him and reluctantly admitted that he was in a most perfect state of mesmeric trance. One remained by the bed through the night. At 3 in the morning, I checked him. He lay as before, pulseless, breath almost undetectable except with a mirror at his lips, his body rigid and cold as marble. Yet he looked not exactly dead. Testing, I attempted to move his right arm by influence. To my astonishment, it followed the direction of my hand, weakly but with certainty. Encouraged, I spoke. "Valdemar, are you sleeping?" There was no reply. His lips trembled. I repeated the question. On the 3rd attempt, his body shivered slightly, his eyelids lifted enough to reveal a sliver of white, and from his lips came a faint whisper. "Yes, I am sleeping. Do not wake me. Let me die so." I asked, "Do you still feel pain in your chest?" After a pause, the answer came even fainter, "No, I am dying." And so we left him, undisturbed. At dawn, the 2nd physician returned and was shocked to find him still alive. At my urging, I questioned him again. This time, after a long effort, his lips murmured, "Yes, sleeping, dying." Both doctors agreed it would be cruel to rouse him, that it was better to let him remain in this peaceful state until death, which surely must come within minutes. Yet the minutes passed into hours. Day followed day, then week after week. And still, Mr. Valdemar remained unchanged. For nearly 7 months, he lay thus, pulseless, breathless, cold, rigid, yet not decomposing, suspended between life and death, under my mesmeric hold. His attendants cared for him as if he still lived. We, the doctors, my assistant, and I, visited daily. At last Friday, we resolved to try awakening him. I began the usual passes to relieve the trance. At first, nothing happened. Then his eyes shifted downward, and from beneath the lids there oozed a yellowish ichor, foul and fetid. His tongue trembled violently, though his jaw remained stiff. And then it came. That voice. That awful, indescribable voice that seemed to come not from his lips, but from some cavern deep in the earth, distant and hollow, with the dreadful texture of rotting jelly pressed against the skin. "For God's sake, quick, quick, wake me, or put me back to sleep. I tell you I am dead." Panic seized the room. I tried desperately to restore him to sleep. Failing, I attempted to awaken him fully. For a moment, I thought I would succeed. The witnesses leaned forward, ready to see him rise. But what followed was horror beyond imagination. In less than a minute, before our eyes, Mr. Valdemar's entire body collapsed, shrank, decayed, liquefied, falling into a loathsome, almost liquid mass of abominable putrescence upon the bed. Nothing remained. Nothing but rot.